Hello and welcome. Today on the channel I'm going to be talking about books I would love to reread again and again and again. And part of this will be from the perspectives of if I could read a book for the first time again, forget what's happened, pick it up and read it again. So many of these are my favourite books that I know I would just never get bored of reading again and again and again, as in the title. But also some of the others are that there are huge revelations in these books that I remember when I found them out and when I turned that page, I was absolutely astounded and it provoked a visceral reaction. And so, talking about that, the first book I'm going to be discussing today is The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. It was described as kind of Gladiator meets Game of Thrones. Obviously, they bandy about Game of Thrones just to basically sell any book nowadays. But this is Game of Thrones in the sense that it's epic, nothing else really. And it is more like Gladiator in the sense that there is that kind of Gladiator-esque sequence in Rage of Dragons where we've got a group, they're fighting in kind of arenas and so forth. I won't say anything else because that would be spoilers. But also this is a tale of vengeance. First and foremost, that is what it's about. A tale of vengeance. And I love the culture that is explored in this book. I love the world building. I love kind of the society that's been built by Evan Winter. And I love how the story unfolds. This is incredibly fast-paced fantasy fiction. And so if you want a fast-paced book, tick. If you want a fantasy book, if you want dragons, there may be some dragons in this, as in the title. And if you want shocks and revelations, this is a book for you. I absolutely adored it, but also on top of that, I'd love to reread it for the first time again, because partway through, you don't know how a main character Tao is going to achieve something. And then there is a twist, and it is just exceptional. One of, if I did a video of top 10 moments of books ever, that would be one of them. And so, yeah, of course, this has to be on the list. Rage of Dragons, an incredible book. And so is the sequel, Fires of Vengeance, which is just there. And so, yeah, absolutely awesome. Tao's a fantastic character. Evan Winter's a brilliant writer. And this is a book I wish I could reread again and again. Next up is one that, of course, I'm not really being adventurous here, is the same as many people. And that is The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Because this was just such a magical experience. Tolkien is perhaps unrivaled alongside maybe George R. R. Martin in the depth that he has assigned his world and the amount of time he has sunk into making it vivid and real and giving it a rich tapestry to its history. So this is one of those experiences that when you're just discovering it for the first time, it is an exceptional read. I've read these 3 times now. It's exceptional every single time. But that first time, the added joy of really just discovering this hidden world for the first time, especially The Hobbit, when Papa Gwyn read it to me when I was quite young, it was just absolutely extraordinary. And yeah, I wish I could reread it for the first time. And yeah, Tolkien's an amazing writer, and I love the Silmarillion as well. So really, not just talking about The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, it is really kind of including all of the works, including Middle-earth. Next up, I have a book by Robin Hobb. This is Assassin's Apprentice. If you're looking for a light, fun read where the characters go on nice adventures and have lots of happy times, and there's a lot of heartwarming moments, basically no tragedy, there's just kind of fun things to do and lots of friendly animals and nothing bad ever happens, don't read this. This is heartbreaking. This takes you through such a roller coaster of trials and tribulations and breaks your heart. Yeah, read it. Yeah, so I guess I'm not making it sound great, but it is an incredible journey, and it's heartbreak, not for heartbreak's sake, but because of you're so attached to the characters. And this is one that there's not necessarily loads of twists and turns, but the first time when our character is taken through these events, I think now knowing what happens when I reread it, I can kind of brace myself. It still really impact me, but I can get ready, emotionally psyched up for it. But I just was not prepared the first time I read this. And the Realm of the Eldlings as a whole. It is absolutely incredible, and I adore this whole series. Although I know I've not read Live Ship, I'm sorry, but I adore the trilogies that have got Fitz as a central character. And this first trilogy is amazing as well. So yeah, that is Assassin's Apprentice. Next up, I had to have some Papa Gwyn on there, and Shadow of the Gods has to be a book that when I read it for the first time, I was just absolutely blown away. By that point, Papa Gwyn had written 7 books in the world of the Banished Lands. So it's quite an escapade to go into a whole new world, very different culture, very different kind of mythology that is engaged with, and historical inspiration in the Shadow of the Gods. It is just absolutely incredible. First meeting Orca one of the best characters of all time, and no one can persuade me otherwise. I love the creatures. I love how they're all brought into this mythological and fantastical elements in the Shadow of the Gods, how Papa Gwyn was inspired by Norse mythology and Ragnarok in particular, and to bring that into an original, fresh world and creation of his own was absolutely magnificent. And also something I wish I could see for the first time again was that cover. I was not prepared for how amazing it was going to be when Papa Gwyn said, look at the cover for the Shadow of the Gods. It just... Marcus Winnie, what an artist. And Papa Gwyn, what an author. Next up, I have some more fantasy, and that is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. This is quite formative to me. I read it probably when I was 17, but formative in the sense that it really opened my eyes to a whole new subgenre of fantasy. This is grimdark, but it's got a lot of humour, and yeah, it's just the first of that kind that I'd really picked up and read. And it is extraordinary. We've got characters who are dark, they are wrong in many ways. We've got Jezzel, who's just an egomaniac looking in the mirror, admiring his jaw. We've got Logan, who despises himself. We've got Pharaoh, who wants vengeance and to kill everything, and more besides that. And it is just an exceptional journey. One of my favourite series of all time. There's a theme here. The books I'm talking about are all my favourites for different reasons, but The First Law is no exception. It is absolutely brilliant, and the Blade itself was the first book to introduce me to that, of course, as it is the first book of the series. So to read this for the first time again, I remember that feeling of just really it's rare that when you start a book, you know you're going to adore it. I felt that feeling with Empire the Vampire. I felt that this was another league. I felt it with Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield, which is historical fiction. I felt this about The Blade itself. And it really has changed a lot of how I've engaged with reading and how many books I've picked up since. And so it is incredibly influential in that aspect, but also I'd love to reread it again and again because it is just a brilliant book. Joe Abercrombie is a master at work, and yeah, one of the best debuts of all time with The Blade itself. Next up, I have The Winter King by Bernard Cornwell. I have loved the Arthurian legends and Arthurian tales for as long as I can remember. I loved watching the Merlin BBC programme from when I was about 7, I think. And since then, I've read many different takes on Arthur, Michael Morpurgo's, and this is the best of them all, in my opinion. The Warlord Chronicles as a whole, it has everything you want in a book. It has the action that you attach to Arthur and historical fiction. It has those character moments as the character relationships. It has tragedy, it has heroism, it brings tears to my eyes, it makes me laugh. It has characters I'm rooting for. I think about it when I'm not reading it, and I still reflect on it a lot, even though I last read this 3 years ago. And so it's one of those books that really does leave a lasting impact on you. And meeting Dervahl. Dervahl was a character who was in the Arthurian legend about a millennium ago, but since then he's kind of been filtered out and many others have taken his place, which they're great for different reasons. But I loved that Bernard Cornwell also took inspiration from those early texts, especially from the monks from Welsh monasteries in the 9th and 10th centuries, I believe. And I love how that brings a very fresh aspect to this Arthurian retelling. And Dervahl is our main character, and it's a chronicler's tale. He's telling the story of his past. And that adds a kind of an element that many Arthurian tales feel a bit stale because they're kind of the same story being told in a very slightly different way. But largely because of Dervahl's presence, this is a very different story of Arthur, and I absolutely adore it. And Bernard Cornwell, absolutely incredible. What a book, what a series. I wish I could reread it again. Next up, I've got Normal People by Sally Rooney. I'm talking about quite a wide variety of books in this video. This is contemporary fiction. Many of you may have heard of the recent programme, well, not recent, a few years ago, but it's a programme that was released a few years ago. And this is basically about two people, Connell and Marianne, who their lives are just intertwined. So when they see each other, when they separate, they think they're not going to see each other again. And it is a romance, but unlike anything I think you've ever read before. But their lives are just intertwined for some reason, and you just see how their story evolves when they're with each other and apart. And it is so heartbreaking, but it's so heartwarming as well. And Sally Rooney has a way, especially of dialogue, of really bringing characters to life, really bringing their quirks to the table and making them feel unique. And she's another brilliant writer. I've read her other books as well. Beautiful World, Where Are You is also exceptional. And Conversations with Friends was really great as well. But this is just, what a book. Normal People, the programme as well, absolutely brilliant. And the twists and turns along the way, the evolution of their relationship. I've reread it and I've also watched the programme again, and it was great. But I think I preferred it slightly on the first read just because you didn't know what directions this was going to go. And also, the first time I read it, I had no idea what to expect. I'd never read anything of that genre before, really, and it just blew me away. And so, yeah, I should not have doubted everyone's love for Normal People. And I wish I could reread it and reread it and reread it again, and I wish I had time to do that. But there's so many other books I want to read. But now, the last one I'm talking about today is The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This is my favourite mythological retelling of all time. This follows the character of Briseis during the Trojan invasion, well, the invasion of Troy, and so what stems from the Iliad. Briseis is the noble from noblewoman from Troy who is captured and becomes a slave of Achilles, and so this is a very different take on the tale of the Iliad. And I love how Pat Barker, this is a feminist retelling, but it's told in a way where Briseis, her mission is just to survive. That's all she can do. She is powerless. She has had everything stripped from her, and it's a very tough read at times because of those themes, but it is absolutely extraordinary. And Pat Barker, what a writer. I mean, if I've said before that one of my dreams is to write a book at some point, and when I do sit down to do that, one of the writers I will look at to kind of examine and analyse their art in terms of their prose will be Pat Barker in The Silence of the Girls. It is something that you could study. I could read this again and again, and every time I pick something else up. And I cannot wait. The third and I believe final instalment in this series is being released in 2024. So I cannot wait to read that. And maybe that'll be a good excuse to reread The Silence of the Girls before then. But anyway, they are, I think, 7 or 8 different books that I would love to reread again and again and again. Obviously, I love them all, but I've got slightly different reasons for rereading them, such as nostalgia with things like The Lord of the Rings and The Shadow of the Gods, but also twists and turns in books like Normal People and Rage of Dragons, things that now I emotionally brace myself. But the first time I really couldn't, because I just did not expect it. It's absolutely extraordinary. These books are all amazing, and I would recommend them to everyone. I think many of these books are ones that kind of go against genre in a way that even if you don't read that genre, I think these are books that you should still read. They're anomalies that you can enjoy no matter what you usually enjoy reading. Such as Normal People. I don't think I've read much in that genre. I've read fantasy and sci-fi, basically only that at the point I picked Normal People up, and I absolutely adored it. And things like Silence of the Girls, these Greek retellings as well, and very different types of fantasy such as Assassin's Apprentice and The Shadow of the Gods. I think these are just books that I overall just recommend to everyone. And everyone, I hope that this has been a video that you've enjoyed. Please let me know books that you've reread a lot, or books that you want to reread again, or books that you have this similar feel that, or the first time you read them. I imagine, I've not read much crime, or any crime really, but I imagine if I read a lot of crime, there'd be a lot more books on this list, because crime, obviously a big part is the twists and turns and finding out who the murderer is or who the murderers are. And so I imagine, and if any of your crime readers, I imagine you've got a lot of that in your mind right now. But everyone, thank you so much for watching, and stay safe.